Okay, Mayor, it's all yours.
Thank you. I hereby call the Des Moines City Council meeting for Thursday, April 14th to order. And with that, I turn the floor over to Councilmember Harris for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Is there any correspondence?
Thank you, Mayor. We received correspondence from Penley Leonard, the city website, and the following have provided written public comment: Sandy Butler, J.C. Harris, Jacqueline Carr, Animal Control, Mike Halco, Marina District, Kelly Lauterbach, Animal Control, Mr. Love, your excessively high taxes, Tony Mills, I do not approve of you spending $1 million on a pilot ferry based off of private with no environmental impact done, Tracy Obermite, Animal Control Officer, Kara Zemanek, why have you decided that animal control is not important to DM citizens? Elizabeth Harrell, excuse me one second. Effective animal control and animal services needed in Des Moines now. And Teresa Briggs, Animal Control Officer. And Mayor, need a roll call, please.
Yes, I realized that after you started as well. Let the record reflect that all 7 members of the council are here. And I want to acknowledge Port Commissioner Hamdi Mohammed visiting the meeting as well. With that, we'll go to public comment. Is Mr. Fighter on before I begin the initial language of the?
Yes, Mayor, it looks like Mr. Fighter, Gary and Alicia Malcolm are on,
Okay.
And Shannon Mann has not made it in yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we take comments from the public, I would just like to remind those participants that any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who become boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the council will be removed from the meeting. When it is your time to speak, you may turn your camera on if you have one. After you have concluded, please turn your camera off. Mr. Fighter, since you're representing the Des Moines Yacht Club, you will have 5 minutes, and I yield the floor to you, and welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I had to pull my speech up real quick. Apologize. Mayor, council members, city staff, and residents, I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and update you on the Des Moines Yacht Club and events for the 2022 boating season. Our club has been a member of the Des Moines community since 1957. We are excited to be celebrating our 65th year. And as Commodore, I'm proud to represent over 300 boating families that call DMYC home. Our mission advocates safe boating, enabling access to the water, promoting good fellowship and family fun. In our recent past, we were the first yacht club in the Puget Sound area to be recognized by Northwest Yachting Magazine's Champion Award for the most energized yacht club in the Pacific Northwest. For all of 2020 and most of 2021, our activities have been suspended. However, we look forward to leaving that behind and returning to an eventful 2022. We are committed to supporting our members, providing leadership in the boating community, and continuing our outreach in the Des Moines area. We have always had efforts which contribute to the betterment of the local community. Last year's contributions provided $7,000 to a variety of organizations, including Dollars for Scholars, the Des Moines Area Food Bank, SR3, and the Legacy Foundation. We provided 3 $1,000 scholarships to Mount Rainier High School seniors last year. Regarding our community-facing club events this year, the lineup includes April 24th. We will be participating in the Daffodil Boat Parade, sponsored by the Tacoma Yacht Club. We have participated in this event for many years with a decorated boat entry that always does a great job of representing not only our club, but the city of Des Moines. May 11th, the Yacht Club will again be hosting and the gathering for Dollars for Scholars, the award event for many of the outstanding Mount Rainier High School students. Our members support this program with our Navigating the Future scholarship funds. Since 2008, we have funded 42 scholarships totaling $37,500. We have a growing scholarship fund that can support this program into the foreseeable future. On May 14th, the South Sound opening day for boating. We have already forwarded all of you your invitations. And as you recall from the invitations, the afternoon ceremony begins about 3 o'clock and it's open to the public. We are planning the usual fanfare with bagpipes, flag ceremony, and the blessing of the fleet. As we have done in the past years, we'll focus on bringing many visiting yacht clubs here by boat. Our objective is to demonstrate that Des Moines is a great boating destination. We are working closely with Scott and the marina staff to pack the public marina with visiting yacht club boats. Since we were founded in the late 50s, this year's event is lost in the 50s. We will be having a car show, a boat show, and a 50s themed dance on Saturday evening. And then I'll be back in April to coordinate the city proclamation for this event. And as always, we look forward to the mayor's participation in the public reading and remarks. On May 21st, we will be holding our 21st annual Marine Swap Meet, which will bring hundreds of boaters from around the Sound to Des Moines as they shop for some incredible bargains. It's a reason to come to Des Moines and should produce some breakfast and lunch business. July 4th, you will find many of our boats at the grand gathering in the Des Moines Marina for what we hope will be the return of the fireworks show. July 23rd and 24th, we will be participating in the Des Moines Waterland celebration, both in the parade and in the gathering of classic wooden boats in the marina. This event is organized by the DMYC members. In July and August, we, along with everyone else, will be enjoying our marina and waterfront activities, Saturday market, music, parks, etc. Excuse me for a second. There are more plans in the fall and holiday season. We are continuing to grow our lighted boat parade by partnering with other boating organizations and tenants in the marina. I will return to update you on those activities. We are a contributing part of the community, and we promote our city as a great water destination wherever we go. We are proud to call Des Moines our home port. In closing, please know we appreciate your efforts in leading the city and the emphasis you are applying to marina redevelopment. Thank you for the opportunity to provide our update.
Thank you, Commodore Fighter. I want to assure you that we are honored to come on May 14th and read that proclamation, and we'll be in force and glad to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you as the season goes on and the year goes on.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next to speak will be Gary Malcolm. Gary, you can turn on your camera and you have the floor for 3 minutes, sir.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me all right?
We can.
Excellent. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity here. And you know, this is all around animal control here. I understand the city is evaluating and looking at how it manages animal control. And I think that's great. As a business coach, I can really appreciate looking newly at situations and figuring out, hey, what's the best path for us as a community. I also understand the city believes it has addressed animal control. My experience, as my wife has already shared with you all, is quite different. To me, there's clearly a gap and a need for some clear direction and resources available to handle the different issues as they arise, regardless of the day and the time. At the last meeting that I watched after, it was shared that there's like a focus that needs to be on the serious crime, and there's no doubt that needs to be a priority. However, I just can't believe that it has to be at the expense of basic services such as animal control in a city of our size. So my request is that the city puts in a clear kind of 24/7 animal control structure and process in place while it's determining this long-term solution. So that's the end of my statement.
Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And next would be Alicia Malcolm. Alicia, go ahead and turn. You got your camera on. You have the floor for the next 3 minutes, and welcome.
How do I follow up that? Thank you so much. Okay, so my full written statements have been submitted to City Council, and several of you have reached out and responded to me about those. So thank you. I prepared a short list of comments and questions from statements that have been brought up in previous conversations. So Quote, the ability of our police to respond to situations we want them to respond to is always a function of the priority of what they need to respond to that may be life-threatening, end quote. This statement illustrates why the distinct role of animal control officers are essential to providing effective animal control services. It suggests that it is untenable to expect the Des Moines Police Department to prioritize animal control calls above and beyond, these the crime that has been cited, which is perhaps why the community continues to insist that there are no animal control services, despite assurances from the city that those services are in fact in place. So a little truth versus fact or perception in play there. Quote, we do have animal control. We don't currently have an animal control officer. Our officers do respond to animal control complaints. Presumably each of you has read my written statement recounting the events of April 3 when my husband and I were engaged in the street by two pit bulls who are known to the community as, repeat offenders, as it were. And I'm looking for where those animal control services were made available to me. And to my family as a tax-paying 3-dog license within the city resident, to the extent that, when I did physically bring the dogs to the police station, the staff there produced a microchipping scan, but shared that they themselves felt unsafe in scanning the dogs. They were dogs unknown to them, didn't know how they would react to being scanned, and they felt unsafe, which I absolutely appreciate. I was just a little shocked at what the expectation and burden of responsibility was then shifted to me as a private citizen. So pointing to some gaps there, quote, we do have one person on our staff, our code enforcement officer, that is trained in animal control and has actually gone to the Animal Control Academy and successfully completed that, end quote. And without a doubt, Officer Batterman is a significant asset within the Des Moines Police Department. And I'm looking for where his training and expertise is being applied and made available as a resource to the community. If we're citing, this is an individual who has training within our department. So I don't think that the takeaway for the public is that we should be seeking our code enforcement officer directly on these calls for aid, especially since our code enforcement officer, we're clear, has a role that is actually revenue generating. And so we don't want to detract from what he has currently been tasked with, to then also take on this animal control role that he has training and expertise in. So who is made available to the public when we call for aid?
Yep. Mrs. Malcolm, can I have you wrap up your thoughts, please? We're at that 3-minute mark.
Oh, thank you.
I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for that reminder. I'm also clear that we're in transition and looking for effective action to be taken to shore up this gap now. And I'll close by saying that it was reported in the last report that I could find, November 2020, that the stray animal calls specifically account for 61% of the animal service calls that the city receives. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm. We appreciate your time as well. Did Bonnie, did Shannon Mann show?
No, Mayor, she didn't. And her comment
Okay.
was, we need an AC officer as neighborhoods with invasive species of birds that scream at all hours of the day is not acceptable. And that concludes public comment, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Now turning the floor over to City Manager Michael Mathias.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. We have one item on the city manager's report today. I think we're, as the mayor said, we're very pleased that Commissioner Mohammed from the Port Commission is with us, and several members of staff will also be providing an update on the South King County Environmental Fund. And with that, also Commissioner Mohammed, we're looking forward to scheduling a tour with you for Des Moines, something on the books that we're trying to work through with your staff. But at any rate, with that, I'll turn it over to Andy Gregory, and Andy, you can go from there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, City Manager Mathias, and thank you to Mayor Mahoney and the rest of the City Council for having us here this evening. I'll pull up my screen to share the presentation, and invite Commissioner Mohammed to say a few words to open this evening.
It appears she may have dropped off.
I did see her at the onset of the meeting.
Yeah, she
I don't
was.
see her. I don't see her now. So I know she was in transit during this time. So if she hops back in, we'll certainly pass it over to her to say a few words.
Yes, I will recognize her, and at a good point, I'll interject and have her add her thoughts.
Okay, that sounds
With
great.
that, you have the
so
floor,
much.
sir.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks again for having us here. My name is Andy Gregory, Senior Program Manager for Environmental Engagement at the Port. And with me tonight is Elise Aiden, Program Coordinator for Environmental Engagement as well. So Elise will be co-presenting and can introduce herself a little bit as her slides come up. So thank you again for having us here this evening. We're here to provide you with an overview of the South King County Community Impact Fund and specifically our environmental grants program. So the South King County Fund was launched in 2019 by the Port Commission to provide $10 million over 5 years to the near airport communities. There are currently 3 programs that this fund supports, and those include the Environmental Grants Program, Economic Recovery Grants, as well as support for WIMBY businesses. This year, we are awarding 18 organizations with environmental grants in the second round for just shy of $690,000. So really excited to share those projects with you this evening. So the Environmental Grants Program supports public improvement projects in the 6 cities closest to the airport. And those include Burien, SeaTac, Des Moines, Federal Way, Normandy Park, SeaTac, and Tukwila. There's a $20,000 per year annual cap on projects. New this year was the addition of multi-year funding. So in the past, we've done single-year projects only, and we offered projects up to 3 years. So that would be a total of $60,000. And this option was quite popular. I think we had almost 10 projects that are going to be multi-year projects. So really exciting. We like to see, the whole goal of this program is really to increase the overall sustainability of the region. And we realize as a funder that sustainable funding is just as important as sustainable environmental projects. As you all probably know, this program was built off of the ACE Fund, of which the city of Des Moines was a recipient, or organizations doing projects in Des Moines were recipients over the 3 years preceding the South King County Fund. And so with the authority to engage in this program, we're also required to verify a 3-to-1 match by the organizations who are participating. So we recognize that with the lofty equity goals that the port has in supporting projects in communities who have not historically been engaged in this work, that this creates a barrier to participation. And we have really tried our best to work with organizations to identify non-cash match options. And those include the value of trees planted, as well as in-kind contributions from partners, and the value of volunteer labor at nearly $34 an hour. So I wanted to share a little bit about our community engagement model, because in addition to the direct benefits that the fund provides for the community through these investments, we really see this as an opportunity to do deep and equity-based community engagement work with the near airport communities. And 2 years ago, when we launched this program, we piloted a community liaison model with Alma Villegas Consulting, who is a consulting firm from South King County with extensive experience in supporting these sorts of models. And over the last 2 rounds, we have worked very closely with outreach specialists who are community liaisons from a wide range of multilingual and multicultural communities in South King County. So here you see our 3 community liaisons from this last round: Sophia, Nemo, and Vicky, who represent the Latinx, Somali, and a variety of other communities in South King County. And these folks work to support the program by conducting outreach to support our grant period, as well as providing direct input and feedback on our grant materials to make sure that we are creating a program that is accessible and equitable in all ways. And so these folks are quite well connected within their communities and work to support nonprofits and community groups in the outreach and application phases of the program. And we have seen a tremendous level of success in increasing the dollars that are going to BIPOC-led organizations through this. We had over 50% of our applicants in this round were BIPOC organizations from these communities. So really seeing tangible results from this incredible work. And it creates an incredible opportunity also for the port to build trusted relationships within the communities. So I would like to pass it to Elise now, who's going to share with you some more information about the grant recipients from this round.
Thank you, Andy. And nice to be here with you all. Deputy Mayor Tracy Buxton, I saw you this morning, so it's really good to have that full circle from the Highline School Foundation breakfast. So I wanted to share about the organizations who we're funding, especially the ones who are working in Des Moines. We had 19 proposals submitted, 18 recommended to move forward. With the 6 cities total, we're funding $686,000. Next slide, please. And so the 5 organizations that are working in Des Moines specifically are EarthGen. They will be doing work with Highline School District, middle school and high school students, teachers, families, and neighbors to make environmental improvements on 3 different campuses. They're working on finding the schools within Des Moines. So if you have any recommendations, please let us know. And they will be helping to do green stormwater infrastructure, such as rain gardens, native plant gardens, or bioswales. So this project will be taking place in Des Moines, SeaTac, and Burien. And it's funded at $60,000 over the next 3 years. We also have African Young Dreamers Empowerment Program, IDEPI, and they have a youth activist project taking place in Des Moines and Federal Way. They're also funded at $60,000. They'll be working in different parks in both cities and funded over the next 3 years as well. We also have Tilt Alliance. They'll continue their year-long environmental training and community capacity building program. So they help support trainees learn and apply the skills to address food and environmental solutions to the communities that they're serving. They'll be in Des Moines, Federal Way, SeaTac, and Tukwila, and they're funded at $45,000 over the next 3 years as well. And then we have the Des Moines Memorial Drive Preservation Association. So they'll have the awesome project of art along the Des Moines Memorial Drive. They'll be partnering with this city, SeaTac, and Burien to install signal boxes, signal box wraps at 14 major intersections along the drive. And this will help to also educate community members on our fallen soldiers from World War I, and they're funded at $8,000. And then we have Friends of Saltwater State Park. They'll be holding monthly work parties to restore the habitat at Saltwater State Park, removing invasive plants, installing native plants, and conducting water quality monitoring to keep our communities wonderful. So they will be funded at $3,310. So those are the big projects in Des Moines, and we're really looking forward to working with city staff members in supporting the organizations that are doing this work on the ground and figuring out how we can better partner.
Great, thank you, Elise. Yeah, thanks so much. So I wanted to just touch for a minute on the Green Des Moines Partnership Program, part of the Forterra ACE work that the port funded starting back in 2017. We just wrapped up this contract at the end of last month. So as a reminder, this was a $450,000 investment as part of the original ACE fund in the nonprofit Forterra to support Burien, SeaTac, and Des Moines in launching Green City Partnership programs. And so this work overall has been incredibly successful. We've seen some amazing tangible results that include both an urban forest management plan that was adopted by the City Council and is now in stages of implementation. We have also seen the addition of a forest steward in the city of Des Moines, access to the CEDAR database, which is a database for tracking and supporting volunteer engagement on community restoration projects. We also saw 11 events held at 2 active restoration sites with over 211 trees planted by 219 volunteers. And I know I've been to events over the years where I've seen city council members and other eager volunteers from the city. So really nice to see the leadership of this program transitioning to the city, and excited to hear and see what happens next. And as a side note, we have seen many projects that we've funded in this round and in the last round of South King County Fund environmental grants, building off of this formative Green City work, where we now have community groups that are applying to the port for funding to plant trees, to implement these plans, to host volunteer events, to remove invasive species. So really starting to realize this vision of investment in this sort of an overall broad management program, and now community really stepping up to the plate to lead the work. So kudos to the city staff and council who have been leaders on this, and look forward to continuing this work going forward. So just a couple notes on next steps for the South King County Fund work. We are planning an environmental symposium that will take place early this summer. We're settling in on a date sometime in early to mid-June. The event will take place at the Highline College. And what we're hoping, the vision for this program is really getting together the folks who are participating in these various environmental programs to, it'll be sort of a conference style event where folks will get together and present the work that they're doing. It'll be an opportunity to network and to learn from each other, really trying to center the voices of youth and folks that are on the ground doing this work. And so more information certainly will be sharing widely a save the date for this event, which we hope to be both in person and have a virtual call in for folks who are interested in attending. Next, the port is currently in the middle of a procurement process for a community capacity building grant. This is a contract up to $400,000 for the next phase of engagement work to support the South King County Fund. We're looking at hiring a consultant who can continue to support our community liaisons, as well as working to continue to break down barriers within the community, building up the capacity of nonprofit organizations and community groups to apply for and receive this funding, as well as support for city staff. We just want to recognize the amount of work that goes into this on the city's level, from managing these projects, permitting, taking care of gardens after they're installed. And so recognizing that there is a burden there, and that we want to provide support to the city staff and mutual shared learning from other cities that are supporting these projects, and whatever we can do to help facilitate these projects in a way that are helpful and meet the Parks and Rec and open space goals that your cities have. And so we will be conducting some outreach this summer in support of our third round of grants, which are expected to launch in the beginning of September. So of course, more to come on that. And I'm sure we'll be sharing that information widely once we have the total dollar amount for this year and the exact launch date of the application. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for your time. We'd love to hear any questions that you might have.
I'll recognize myself, and then Councilmember Harris will be next. So I had a question on the wrap boxes, which I love the idea. What will the theme be? Will it be to honor our veterans, or?
The theme will be, actually they're coming up with the theme through discussions of community input and everything. So they're asking for art ideas, but the center is focused on veterans and
Fantastic. As a veteran myself, I thank you guys for considering that, particularly on the Memorial Drive. That means so much to those that gave so much on Des Moines, at when World War I. So
Absolutely.
cool. Thank you very much. I'm going to recognize Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick things. Thank you for the outreach in other languages. I would ask that you consider adding Vietnamese to the list. We have a growing group of people here, and that would be very helpful for them. The other thing is, that 3-to-1 match, I mean, it goes back to 1988, and you being the port, gosh, if you could put something on your legislative agenda to make that a little easier, that would be pretty darn swell. Thank you.
Thank you for both of those comments, Councilmember Harris. We will be engaging a new group of liaisons this year, and as we do each year, we look at the top linguistic and emerging cultural groups that are important to be engaging. And so thank you for that recommendation. In regard to the 3-to-1 match, I will tell you that has been a legislative priority for the port for the last 2 sessions. We actually had a bill this round sponsored by Representative Orwell that unfortunately just didn't make it out of committee. I know the legislature has a ton of priorities, and unfortunately this one hasn't made it to the top of the list. But we continue to promote that as a barrier and really looking for ways holistically to address that. So thank you for your support. And if we get up again in front of the legislature with this opportunity, maybe we'll reach out for support or public comment. So thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may.
You may.
Yeah, Andy, appreciate that. I think that we've worked with Eric Fitch somewhat on trying to get this lessened. I think it's been a priority for our legislative advocate, Mr. Hempstead, and so we'll continue to have that as a priority. Thank you.
And I'd also add, Mr. Gregory, that if Port Commissioner Mohammed at a later date chooses to give us 5 minutes or something like that, we'd be more than glad to hear what she has to say.
That's great. Thank you for that invitation. We'll pass it along, and I know she would send her, if she were here, would send her apologies for missing that. So we will pass it on to her and her assistants and see if we can get her scheduled. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the time this evening. We really appreciate it.
Mayor, that concludes the city manager's report tonight.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. And with that, can I have the deputy city clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, 2022 to 2023 on-call general civil engineering services PARAMETRIX task agreement or assignment, sorry. Item 3, acceptance of 2022 WCIA risk reduction grant award. Item 4, State of Washington Department of Ecology 2021 to 2023 water quality stormwater capacity grant agreement. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll recognize Councilmember Steinmetz today. Is there anyone that wishes to pull an item from the agenda? Seeing none, I'll take the vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Seeing the vote 7-0, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're going to be moving on to the public hearing of the LUA 2021-033 216th Townhome Modified Preliminary Subdivision application. And I now open the public hearing for that, and I yield the floor to our principal planner, Laura Tashiko.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Laura Tashiko, Principal Planner. And the purpose of tonight's public hearing is for the City Council to consider a preliminary modified subdivision application and to receive public comment. Next slide, please. 9 too much.
Sorry, Ms. Tashiko, I'm hearing
Yeah,
background noise.
Yeah, that's not my background, so I'm not sure who's, there we go.
If-
Yeah.
It seems like the situation is rectified. You have the floor back.
Perfect, thanks. So for a brief project overview, the 16th Townhomes application proposes to subdivide approximately 2.3 acres into 23 townhouse lots. The properties are located at the southwest corner of South 216th Street and 14th Avenue South, and previously contained 2 single-family residences, which were demolished in 2021. Site development will include private roads and sidewalks, landscape buffers, and a private stormwater tract. The proposed townhouse structures will be in 2 to 4 unit configurations with varying floor plans with private fenced backyards. Parking requirements for townhouses include 2 off-street parking stalls for each unit, the same that is required for a detached single-family home, as well as 1 guest stall for every 5 units. 5 parallel guest parking stalls will be provided along the private street. The applicant will pay in lieu fees for park requirements consistent with level of service standards in the Parks Master Plan at the time of final plat. Next slide, please. So the Des Moines Comprehensive Plan identifies the preferred land use of these parcels as townhome, and the current zoning is RA 3600, attached townhouse, a duplex zone. The policy decisions on land use were made at the time that these designations were established, and the current proposal implements those regulations and is just the type of development that was envisioned to provide additional middle housing choices that bridge the gap between single family and more intense multifamily housing. So these images show excerpts from the maps, and the red townhouse zoning on the left is bordered by single family zoning to the north and to the south, and denser multifamily zoning to the east and to the west. Next slide, please. So this application is being reviewed for compliance with both the subdivision code in Chapter 1710 of the Des Moines Municipal Code and the modified subdivision code in Chapter 1715. A modified process is used to consider a proposal that deviates from one or more of the design requirements in Chapter 1735, which describes the standards for the layout and design of subdivisions, and it includes unique offsetting design features not ordinarily provided in traditional subdivisions. This project proposes to increase the maximum number of lots to be served by a private access tract, and the offsetting measures will be discussed further in the presentation. So the council's role tonight is to objectively review the facts from the hearing and from the council packet, and to make a decision based on the approval criteria in the code. Next slide, please. So for some background, the initial application was received on September 8th, 2021. A notice of application was sent out on October 1st. 1 emailed public comment was received and 1 voicemail. The written comment was from the Snoqualmie tribe, and an archaeological survey was conducted in response to their request. The phone call focused on parking requirements, and the applicable codes were provided on a follow-up call. So review of the application materials and resubmittals was conducted. And on March 29th, a design review decision was issued, which was a high-level overview of compliance with townhome design standards, parking and landscaping codes, and other zoning requirements. A more detailed review of these items will occur during civil and building permit reviews. After the reviews were complete, a notice of public hearing was issued on March 30th. 5 emailed comments, and actually I think we had a 6th come in just before the council meeting started tonight, and questions were received, 2 of which were repeat commenters from the earlier notice. These, as well as additional discussion on a Facebook post, have been added to the public record. Comments received were related to street lighting, potential for overflow parking and traffic on 14th, and airport noise mitigation. As we stated earlier, each unit will have 2 parking stalls, the same requirement as a detached single-family home, as well as additional guest stalls. Street lighting will be provided along the project frontage on 14th Avenue South, and the city is looking into lighting concerns further south on 14th that were raised during the comment period. Regarding airport noise, while Des Moines-specific construction standards for noise are no longer in place, new buildings will need to comply with current building codes. And I believe the last comment that came in related to staffing in the city's building division and code enforcement divisions. So next slide, please. So there are 8 approval criteria for modified subdivisions listed on these next 2 slides. Number 1 is consistency with comprehensive plan and municipal code. Number 2, compliance with lot standards. 3, compliance with layout and design standards for subdivisions. 4, provisions for items such as utilities, access, open space, pedestrian improvements, and parks. Next slide, please. 5, it serves the public health, safety, and welfare as addressed in applicable policies and standards. 6, provides for coordinated development with adjoining properties. And 7, includes design features beneficial to the public, which are not typically found in traditional subdivisions. These are equivalent in scale or value to the improvements from which the project deviates. And number 8 pertains to projects that have environmentally critical areas and tracks and does not apply to this project. So regarding criterion number 7, the applicant is requesting to increase the number of lots served by a private street. Under a standard subdivision review, the layout and design standards in the subdivision code allow for a maximum of 4 lots. The Des Moines street design and construction standards allow for up to 16 and additionally provide a process by which a deviation request for additional lots may be approved. For modified subdivision criterion 7, the application includes offsetting design features equivalent in scale or value to deviation request. Next slide, please. So 4 design features have been reviewed and deemed appropriate mitigation to provide public benefit by the Public Works and Community Development departments. These include right-of-way improvements, including the replacement of ADA curb ramps on the northwest and northeast corners of 14th Avenue South and South 218th Street, south of the project. In addition, 20 feet of sidewalk currently containing trip hazards will be replaced along 14th in that vicinity. And these off-site features will improve accessibility on the 14th Avenue South corridor. Next slide, please. So, surface water improvements include enhancements to the private stormwater detention facility on the project site. These include level 3 flow control for additional on-site stormwater detention and use of a modular wetland treatment unit for additional water quality treatment. These features will decrease downstream impacts from runoff and pollutants. Next slide, please. So if the council finds that the project meets the approval criteria, it must approve the preliminary plat application. Preliminary plat approval applies to the general concept and layout of the plat, with more detailed engineering review to occur under the purview of the Public Works and Community Development directors during civil plan review. Subject matter experts from the city, utilities, and South King Fire and Rescue have reviewed the application materials for compliance with these criteria and recommend approval. Next slide, please. So for next steps, subdivision reviews consist of 3 application stages: preliminary plat, civil review, and final plat. Upon preliminary plat approval, the applicant will submit grading and right-of-way permit applications for a more detailed review of the site improvements. A final modified subdivision is a type 5 quasi-judicial decision by the city council without requirement for public comment that essentially confirms that the improvements have been completed and that is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. After recording the final plat, building permits for the townhomes may be submitted and they will be reviewed for consistency with building codes and the design review decision. Next slide, please. So that concludes the staff report, and the recommended motion is provided on this slide.
You're muted, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Laura. That was an excellent presentation. The following are the rules of order for conducting tonight's public hearing. All council members should now give consideration as to whether they have 1, a demonstrated bias or prejudice for or against any party to the proceedings. 2, a direct or indirect monetary interest into the outcome of the proceedings. 3, a prejudgment of the issue prior to hearing the facts on the record. Or 4, ex parte contact with any individual excluding administrative staff with regard to an issue prior to the hearing. If any council member should answer in the affirmative, then the council member should state the reason for their answer, and at this time, so that the mayor may inquire of administration as to whether a violation of the appearance of fairness doctrine exists. I'm going to ask you each individually. I'll read the question and then I'll recognize each of you to answer the question. Have any of you had any discussion on this topic, or do you feel you have an actual or appearance of conflict of interest? Deputy Mayor Buxton.
No conflict, Mayor.
Councilmember Steinmetz.
No, no conflict.
Councilmember Oxiger. Sir, you're muted.
Yes, no comment. No conflict.
Okay. Councilmember Nutting.
No, no conflict.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes, Mayor, I have a statement to read from the city attorney. This last weekend, I posted about this matter on a Facebook page. The intent behind my post was to inform interested citizens of the public hearing and let them know they could comment at the meeting. I included the link to the packet. Several citizens responded to the post and provided comments. On Monday, I was contacted by the city attorney and informed that receiving these types of comments outside of the public hearing was inappropriate. As a result, I edited the post and removed the ability of others to comment, and I hid those comments. I have provided the city attorney with the comments that I received so that they may be put into the record. I have not had any additional conversations about this matter. I can confirm that I will reserve judgment until all the evidence has been presented, and my decision will be made solely on the basis of matters of record.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. According to council rules, if the answer is in the affirmative, no matter how remote, the council member should disclose such facts to the city manager, who will seek the opinion of the city attorney as to whether a potential violation of appearance of fairness doctrine exists. The city manager shall communicate such opinion to the council member and the presiding officer. With that, I turn the matter over to the city manager for comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Based on the statement, Councilmember Harris disclosed these contacts to the city attorney before the meeting. The city attorney has informed me that although ex parte contact is a violation of the appearance of fairness doctrine, Councilmember Harris can cure this by disclosing his contacts and putting them on the record. Because he has done this, he does not need to recuse himself, and we can proceed with the hearing.
Thank you, city manager. And to conclude this, I have had no contact. So now we begin the public comment portion of the public hearing. All comments by I'm sorry, Councilmember Steinmetz, did I not recognize you?
Oh, Mayor, you didn't
Councilmember
recognize
Pennington.
me, and the answer to your question is.
I'm sorry, Councilmember
no
Pennington, my
contact
apologies.
and no conflicts.
Okay, my apologies.
It's all right.
Zoom meetings. It is now time for the public comment portion of the public hearing. All the comments by proponents, opponents, or the public shall be made in the Zoom meeting, and any individual making comments shall first give their name and the city in which they reside. The individuals will have 3 minutes to speak. It is not necessary to be a proponent or opponent in order to speak. If you consider yourself neither a proponent nor opponent, please speak during the proponent portion and identify yourself as a proponent, and identify as neither a proponent nor an opponent. No comments shall be made from any other location, and anyone making out of order comments shall be subject to removal from the meeting. There will be no demonstrations during or at the conclusion of anyone's presentation. May I have the following turn your cameras on? Mr. John Everett, Mr. Brandon Lukes, Mr. Todd McKittrick, and Mr. William Steinke. So, City Clerk Wilkins, do you see them all visible?
Mayor, I see everyone, but let me take a look here.
Yeah, I see Mr. Everett.
Mr. Laux. I do not see Brandon Laux on here,
Oh,
Mayor.
is he there in the same meeting?
Oh, maybe he's in the same meeting with
Yes,
Mr.
okay, I
Everett.
see him there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. I would like you all to raise your right hand and consider the following question and respond, I do. Do you affirm under penalty or perjury under the laws of the state of Washington that the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge? I'm going to recognize each one of you. Mr. Everett. Go ahead and say, I do.
I do.
Mr. Laux.
I do.
Mr. McKittrick. You're muted, sir. I can't.
I do.
Okay. And Mr. Steinke.
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, we will go through the process. The first one to speak is Mr. Everett. You have the floor for the next 3 minutes, sir.
I appreciate that, sir. I would actually like to defer my time to Todd McKittrick to start, and then he could turn over to me if there's other stuff he wants me to cover.
I'll allow Mr. McKittrick to go first for his 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council and staff. My name is Todd McKittrick. I'm the applicant. Obviously you've seen the team with ESM, with John and Brandon and all the staff to answer any of the technical questions you have. My only introduction was to kind of give a brief. This project, even though it's a townhouse project, it is a zero lot line subdivision. And unlike most townhouses that you've seen before, my proposal is much larger. These are 22, 23, 2,400 square foot. There's both 2-car garages on top of 2-car parking outside, bedroom suites for extended care, family members, and also very large backyards. And some of them are 25-foot deep backyards. It's kind of given us an opportunity, since we're not making any more land anywhere, to give those buyers who can't afford the single family homes without driving hours outside the circle, to still be close into town, into a great city with Normandy Park, Des Moines, and be close to the core. And just they share one wall with their neighbors. I'm here to answer any of the questions regarding the project. I appreciate the staff time, and the team's here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Everett, do you wish to add any more information during this public comment portion?
The only thing I would add is that the applicant's team agrees wholeheartedly with the staff report and findings and conclusions that Laura presented earlier, and we appreciate staff's hard work in helping to make this a relatively smooth review process.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Mr. Laux, do you wish to take your 3 minutes?
I also appreciate that. I'll be here also to answer any technical questions as the meeting continues on.
Thank you, sir. And turning it over to Mr. Steinke, you have the floor for 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, thank you. First, I'll start by saying, Mr. Mahoney, thank you for your service. My name's William Steinke. I just recently moved to the neighborhood. I purchased the house on 216th and 14th. I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. And after Seattle, Washington, I went to 29 Palms when I joined the Marine Corps. Post that, I've been a plumber for 7 years. So I've been in the industry for 7 years. I apologize for not having more research done, but I received this notice late due to the fact that I obviously was not on the mailing list. My concern is that the city of Des Moines only has 5 inspectors. Those 5 inspectors are split between 2 different departments. They do building, 3 of them do building and electrical, 2 do building and plumbing, and none of them do code enforcement. The city of Des Moines does not have a code enforcement department. This means that there's not an individual driving around checking on building projects going on. I know when I purchased my house, there was multiple code violations that I could see from my industry experience. And this is something that was not caught. My house had a water pressure of 150 PSI. This could cause my house to flood. While this might be cheaper housing for some individuals or more affordable, if it's not being monitored or checked, then I'm concerned that it could damage their property or their welfare and be a bad investment. So what I'd like to see before we consider as a city expanding zoning is to create a code enforcement department that actually would monitor it and regulate that, so that for the betterness of Des Moines. I don't want to see it like Seattle. As probably anyone that lives here knows, there's a lot of houses going up for sale currently, and there's a lot of houses getting sold and remodeled. And due to the rapidness of that currently happening in this economy, I think that it's prudent to consider having a code enforcement department before considering allowing any more permits of large scale. Also, if you guys need an animal control officer, I'd be glad to go through the course because it sounds like that's a whole thing.
Yeah, Mr. Stanky, it's just about this subject. My
Oh,
apologies.
my apologies. Nope, you did not interrupt me. So that's my main concern. Since I still have some time, some of the issues, again, was the 150 PSI water pressure at my house, which can cause faucets to burst, supply lines in the house to flood. In addition to that, there was hazardous material dumped in my backyard that I'm taking upon myself to clear out, opposed to going after the contractor illegally. And that is all I have. Thank you guys. I hope to be more of a part of this, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Steinke. Now that we've heard all the public comment, I will now inquire of the administration as to whether there have been any misstatements of fact or whether the administration wishes to introduce any materials as to subject raised by the proponents or opponents or alter in any regard its initial recommendations. I yield the floor to City Manager Mathias.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one very specific correction. Mr. Steinke referenced that we do not have resources devoted to code enforcement. To clarify, we have a full-time code enforcement officer who resides in the police department. That's our CSO, Corey Batterman. And we also engage often in interdisciplinary code enforcement that can involve other departments in the city to assure that the highest quality of enforcement with our codes and quality of life. So that is not an accurate statement, sir.
I spoke with
Mr. Steinke, I'm sorry.
My apologies.
There is no place for a response.
Rebuttal.
At this time, a rebuttal.
Okay. Nope, my apologies.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, with that, does council have any questions? I'm going to open the floor as I see your hands and we'll track you along the way. I have Council Member Harris first. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I'm interested in the size of the drainage tract. Is there any specific technical necessity for that?
Hi, Laura. I can respond to that one. This is Tyler Beakley, surface water engineer for the city of Des Moines. I was reviewer on this application as well. So what they're proposing is to go from what's called level 2 flow control for their detention, which means they need to detain a 2-year storm and a 10-year storm event. So that's the maximum amount of rain you'd get on those intervals. What they're proposing is to upgrade that to level 3 flow control, which detains a 100-year storm event. Because this is draining down to Des Moines Creek, we're able to discharge those detained flows at a slower rate, helping fish populations, helping habitat, helping mitigate sort of the collective runoff as it spills down into Des Moines Creek. So just an overall added benefit for any development that's going to detain more water.
Okay, but the outfall from the subdivision goes south. It doesn't go on to the 14th.
It goes north actually to 216.
So my apologies. Thank you, Tyler. The other thing is I'm fascinated by the I don't see an elevation drawing, but the landscaping is so there's not to be fencing per se, but it's going to be the trees and shrubs are going to, be around the perimeter.
So yeah, the municipal code has a requirement for a landscaping buffer around the entirety of the development. And I know my understanding is there will be fencing around the yards, the rear yards of these houses, not requiring the subdivision, but for the residents there.
Is there, does the developer have any responsibility to, make sure that that landscaping thrives just, over a certain number of years? Or
Right.
I mean, who maintains
Required landscaping is required to be maintained, and that would be something we would look at the time of final plat. The maintenance responsibility is in some sort of agreement like CC&Rs that the homeowners would maintain that.
And last but not least, is there any tree replacement requirement, or basically is the perimeter landscaping, does that essentially, is there any net tree loss?
So typically we'd look, where possible to incorporate existing landscaping. And, there was a tree survey done as part of this, and there might be some more detail that can be provided, but that my understanding is the majority, if not all of the trees on this site are either dead or in severe decline due to insect infestation and drought.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of it in terms of, I know the area very well, and yeah, the trees are really in terrible shape, but I'm just thinking of it, if they were, in good condition, what the number would be that, you want to have an adequate number of trees, regardless of whether it's, single family or whether it's multifamily. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, just to clarify, was there a question there?
No, it would be good. I was
because there'll be time for statements. Is my point.
I was wondering if there could be an elevation drawing that just gave a sense of what the perimeter would look like.
Actually, if we can pull up the presentation, there's a couple extra slides after the motion slide, just in case. There's a landscaping. I think the design is an earlier design, but it gives a sense of the perimeter landscaping. There we go.
No, I meant like if you're walking along 14th or 216th, what you would see if you look to your left. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Right.
At this point, I'll move on to
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Buxton. You have the floor.
Mayor, two questions. There was some communication from community members mentioning affordable housing. Sometimes that term can be interpreted miscellaneous ways. So this development is it true this is not a tax incentivized development? Is that true?
I would defer that answer to the applicant on this in terms of the housing.
This project is a market rate. I do not know where the affordable housing statement came in, but these are market rate townhomes.
Okay. And could you clarify for those that may not know what a zero lot line subdivision means versus a condominium complex of townhomes?
Yes, and essentially what in a condominium, the condo association owns the walls, the land, everything. Where in a zero lot line subdivision, you own the land underneath your box. And so if you have an outside unit, you own from the outside of the building to the air gap between the next unit, and you own the land under that property. Where the condominium association, the condo would own all that. It makes a difference in affordability for homeowners because the condominium association, the insurance, the warranty and the liability for that makes the cost go extremely higher. Those costs are passed on to the buyers. So this is basically an attached single family home is what I'd like to describe it as. If that answers your question.
Including the yard, right? It's not
Including
just
the yard.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for the clarity. That's all I have now for now, Mayor.
Councilmember Nutting, I recognize you next.
Yeah, my question is there any pervious pavement or concrete for sidewalks required on this project?
Yes, there's, private street and sidewalks. I don't know if there's anything, if Tommy Owen's on here, if he wants to add a little extra detail.
Hey, Laura, I can address that too. I believe you said pervious sidewalk and asphalt. Is that correct?
Okay, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, this is required for them to do an analysis of the feasibility of it, but I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that was proven infeasible. So they're just going to be doing standard asphalt, standard concrete for those improvements.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
I'm looking, Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you. Got about 4 questions. So what were the results of the archaeological review?
Those did not yield any findings. We also had King County Historic Preservation do a look at potential historic eligibility, and there was nothing found there either.
Okay, thank you. The picture that you showed of the townhome, is that an accurate representation of what the final product will look like, or is that just will it be similar to that, or is that kind of what you're envisioning?
I mean, that was part of the high level overview that we did, just to make sure that the applicant has products that can meet the design standards, that can change somewhat between. I mean, we'll look to make sure that it's consistent with the overall design review conditions, but I don't know, Todd, if there's anything you want to add on that.
The designs in the rendering that you were shown, that is the design we're going with at this time. We may refine it a little bit more, but that is an accurate representation of what the intent is now to build.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6, it's a coordinated development with adjoining properties. Is that relative to that design review that we were just talking about, and that there's condominiums and apartments surrounding that? Is that what that statement means?
That's more geared towards things like shared access, or in this case, there's some drainage improvements that have helped to divert some runoff that would have gone on to some adjoining vacant properties that's may assist that development in the future, but it's really more coordination with potential future development in the area.
Okay, and then is there a requirement for, I know in some neighborhoods that go in, they're required to put in like a neighborhood park. Is there a requirement in this case for that?
So townhomes essentially it's similar to if it was a detached single family subdivision. We look at potential for whether there's enough capacity on site for a park, or in this case, just given the size of the development, given that there are a lot of parks in the area, the choice would be to have them pay an in lieu fee that would go towards enhancing other parks in the vicinity.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. And I just, no, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. I have a question for Mr. McKittrick, and your name is very difficult to pronounce. Too many C's and K's. Just realizing that the plans are still, they're being formulated, but approximately how many 2, 3, 4 bedroom residents are we talking about? If you could quantify each of the 23 units.
I want to believe, and I don't want to quote, but I believe all of them are 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. I mean, there's not many. I mean, smallest one may be 2,000 square feet. Some are wider units, maybe 24 wide, some are 20, but the majority of them are all 4 bedrooms. And I feel that's a very accurate, if not all, would be a 4-bedroom unit. I can't think of any 3 bedrooms that are in the design right now.
Okay, thank you. And obviously you mentioned there are 2-car garage units.
Some units are 2-car garage, some units are single-car garage, but we've made driveways for those for adequate for parking both inside and out.
As well as street parking.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, do I have a second round of questions? Councilmember Oxiger and Councilmember Steinmetz, do you have any questions before I go through the second round? Seeing none. Any other council members have any additional questions? Councilmember Harris, your second time, sir.
Yeah, just so, Mr. McKittrick, do you have any examples of I hate to nag about it, but it's listed as a type 2 landscape buffer, and I'm familiar with that, but do you just sort of have some example photographs of similar projects that could just give the public a sense of what it's going to be like, because it's really a significant part of the project, right? I mean, it's going to be something prominent. So yeah.
What I would tell you, Councilman Harris, I do not at this time have, we can Google what a level 2 landscaping is. The only thing I would tell you is that though there's the landscape buffer that's a requirement, that doesn't include any of the landscaping that is planned for the inside of the project, whether around street shade, front yard trees. So, there's more trees that, though there's very few, if any, trees that are healthy enough to survive the development, because most of them you go out there now, most of them are dead and about ready to fall. Though we'll be replanting the outside, there's also a number of trees that we planted inside within the development, in the front yards, within the backyards, if there's privacy between units or windows. So there's more plants and trees that are going to be planted on this development, just in addition to the type 2 on the surrounding that's a requirement.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It looks really cool. No. It's just that it's novel. It's different from what residents are used to, and it would just be nice to be able to go, ooh,
yeah, and unfortunately, I don't have that at this time.
Yeah, no.
So,
thank you, sir.
I can add to that in that, so a type 2 landscaping buffer is defined in the city's landscaping code. Some examples of that would be what has been going in around the Wesley Homes South Campus development, what's been going in along the Des Moines Creek Business Park development. Those are also, complying with those requirements. So you don't have to go too far west to see an example.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Oxiger's hand up for questions.
Yes. So who then would be responsible for the maintenance of the perimeter buffer zone? Is that the individual adjoining property, or is there some sort of development?
Typically, there would be some sort of a homeowners association that would help to maintain all of the private common areas. So things like the stormwater tract, the street, the sidewalks, the landscaping buffer. Yeah.
Okay, typically, but is there one plan for this development?
Yes, there will be a homeowners association for this development to ensure that those requirements that come on the final plat will continue to be maintained, and it'll be the HOA's responsibility.
Okay,
and one of the criteria for final plat is that there are maintenance provisions for those. So that's something we'll review at the final plat stage.
Thank you.
Do I have any more questions from council? Thank you. I will now close the public hearing. Is there a motion? Councilmember Buxton, or Deputy Mayor Buxton, my apologies.
I move to adopt draft resolution 22-017 to approve the 216th Townhomes preliminary modified subdivision as recommended by staff.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. I acknowledge your second. With that, we'll take discussion before taking the vote. Who would like to go first on council, if anybody? Deputy Mayor Buxton, you are first.
Thank you, council member. I mean, Mayor.
Thank you.
Had to get shut.
I know.
Yeah. I am impressed with the level of questions that my colleagues have posed and also the answers from staff and our applicants. A lot of things I hadn't thought of, and this is a well thought out process as they're coming to the table tonight, in my opinion. Just a couple of statistics about what's coming up here in our region. In the next 20 years, there's going to be about 700, there's projected 700,000 people and 500,000 jobs. And we've got a Growth Management Act that filters down and requires us to increase our density and zoning. In Des Moines, right in this particular area, we have extensive investment in that corridor as our gateway corridor to our city with sidewalks, lighting, planters, the left turn lanes. So really that whole area there, it's no longer as suitable as it once was for large single family residential lots. So I feel like this type of development is very innovative. It's something that I think we can look to as we move forward. The city of Des Moines is pretty built out. It's a great compromise. It provides suitable residential homes and increased density without the impact of other kinds of increased density. It provides this, as we asked, this is a home ownership, provides the residents that will have investment in the community, a stable residency. It's this missing middle housing that it's kind of a word that we're hearing a lot of. Our cities need to work to provide. That's what this is. This is innovative development. I'm impressed with it. And this, it's going to complement our long range plans for that corridor, 216th. And I'm pretty impressed with it. So I'm going to be in support of this tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you.
Other council members' comments? Councilmember Harris, you are next.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the future, and I'm a bit naggy about that the landscaping. Simply because, it is on this particular area of where there's going to be a certain amount of traffic and people, it's just got to be done right. But this is a prototype for where the things are heading, and it could not be in a better location to set this up. I mean, it's just right near existing parks. It's yeah, you couldn't have picked a better spot to showcase what we can do in the future. And so, no pressure, but this has to be executed just best of all possible way, so that the community rethinks zoning. If this goes well, it will really open people's minds to a lot of future possibilities. So yeah, thank you. This is really a big deal.
Thank you. Any other council members have comments? Mr. Steinmetz, you have the floor. Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thanks, council member.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first development issue that we've had to address since I've been on council. So, you know, I can't say that I understand a whole lot about it. And I would like to thank Deputy Mayor Buxton for helping me understand the notice process that went through this and why we don't have a first and a second reading on something like this. There was a community mailing that's part of the notice process. There's the posting of a sign for that. And then, of course, the notice of the meeting and giving everybody an opportunity to respond at that point. And so, you know, I appreciate, you know, having that explained to me because I didn't understand that process. Additionally, you know, I would like to echo what pretty much everybody else has said, is that I think this is a creative way to meet the density and population requirements that are required of the city in the Growth Management Act and the general plan that we have. And I think it looks like it's going to attract you know, people who are committed to Des Moines, because not only are they going to own the box, as Mr. McKittrick referred to it, but they're going to own the dirt. You know, and I think that a lot of people are just more committed to their communities when they're in a position to do that. I'd like to see, I hope it goes well. I hope this does become a model for future development in Des Moines, and we can encourage and makes those future developments affordable, more affordable to a broader array of people, and finding that middle ground. So I thank you. It's very well thought out.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Councilmember Pennington, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. This project is I think a really good project. I think in 2019, when council was asked to review and increase the density in that area, we turned that down, and we turned it down because we didn't want the mega apartment complexes in there. We wanted something that was going to complement our gateway. We wanted something that would provide housing and that would complement the single family residents that live in the neighborhood. And so this really has kind of validated that decision that we made in 2019. And so this is a good project. I just want to remind people, this is not about you know, rehashing 2019 and the density. This is about making sure that they have met the criteria to be able to go forward with this project. And in my mind, they have. I think it's a complementary project to our city, and so I will be voting to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Do Councilmember Nutting or Councilmember Oxiger have any comments? Councilmember Nutting.
I'll just say it's a great project. It's what's zoned for up there, and it's what we envisioned. So well thought out. I'm excited to see shovels turning. So I'll be voting for this. Obviously, I seconded it.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. Mr. McKittrick, you made me say your name one more time, so I'm getting better at it all the time. I just want to thank you for making the effort to invest in our community. I think it is a viable option, especially as we move forward, especially for towns that are primarily developed. And this is a creative solution. So I want to thank you for that. And I will be supporting this as well. With that, seeing no more, we have a motion to adopt draft resolution 22-017 to approve on the 216 townhouse preliminary modified subdivision as recommended by staff. I'm going to go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your right hand and I will call you out. Deputy Mayor Buxton, Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Pennington, and myself. The vote passes 7-0. Congratulations. Thank you. So now we're going to be moving on to passenger ferry pilot test. And from what I understand, I'm going to turn the floor over to City Manager Michael Matthias.
Thank you, Mayor. Really a pleasure to talk with the council about this issue tonight. Essentially, what we're asking for is for council to approve a potential expenditure for passenger ferry service. And the reason that we've taken this step, which in some respects could be considered an extra step, but it's that we put a lot of time and energy into this process, and we don't want to continue that process if council's not supportive of what we're doing. So we're essentially asking council for a consensus that we move forward. So we're not asking to spend any money right now, but to go through the process of establishing potential operating agreements that we would then bring back to council for your approval or comment or changes or whatever it is. But there's a couple things I want to emphasize here. One, I'd like to talk a little about the history. So history of potential passenger ferry service in Des Moines. I think it's important to acknowledge some of the pioneers who did this. A number of years ago, Susan White led the charge, working with Joe Duesenberry. It wasn't apparently time at that point for it to go forward. But since that time, we've invested energy in looking at a demand study for passenger ferry service at the recommendation of the private sector. We completed a demand study in 2020 in the middle of COVID. There was huge amount of support. That study is on our website for review. Well, there was also a separate study done by the same consultant of significant decision makers in the area. And they basically were interviewed, and everyone talked about the value that passenger ferry service would have for Des Moines and for the region. The mayor wrote an article in City Currents about passenger ferry service. We had at the retreat last week a fairly comprehensive, and I don't use fairly pejoratively, I just say there's a lot of pieces to it. I thought Peter Phillips did a great job in kind of breaking it down, what the essential elements are. And so I want to clarify that as we discuss this with the council, we suggested using what we call one-time sales tax, $975,000, not to exceed that. And the one-time sales tax can easily be misinterpreted. But what that is, in fact, is taxes collected on construction materials for projects over $15 million. So that would be Sound Transit, Wesley's development, the business park, and others that exceed that amount. Construction, sales tax on construction, and B&O tax, business and occupation taxes. That's where that money comes from. It was always designated by council to be for capital improvements. During COVID, at one point, we requested from council if a portion of that money, if necessary, could be used to supplement the general fund in the event of the loss of revenue that occurred with COVID. Council approved that, but there's sufficient funds through this one-time sales tax to potentially fund ferry service in a pilot project from this coming July through October. I think we'd have 4 days of service, a number of times each day. We're working right now to find a appropriate dock and landing spot in Seattle. We've identified different ferries that could be utilized. And what we intend is for those resources to fund this. It will not add in any way to the tax burden of the city. Residents will not pay for this. There will be no additional sales tax for the community, for residents, for local business. any of that. This comes from an existing source of money that council, in its wisdom, established in the past, and that money's been used for capital projects. In looking at potential ferry service, it's something that we've coordinated with some of our regional partners. There's a lot of support for this. PSRC did a study at one point that did not include this. They were anxious to include our study in what they were doing, but the constraints that they faced prevented that. But we've had significant support from most of the people associated with the passenger ferry service community in Western Washington. And passenger ferry service for us provides multimodal opportunities for people to get to Seattle or for people in Seattle to get to Des Moines. So now all of a sudden we're establishing a reciprocal process that will import capital to Des Moines through our passengers, and hopefully we'll work with our marina redevelopment, and this will support businesses that develop on the marina floor and support our downtown. And as the marina steps come to completion at some point, and hopefully not too long, that will be another support for this. So I wanted to make the point that none of this will impact our existing residents relative to the cost. And the $975,000 does not include any potential revenue that is accrued from the passenger ferry what's called fare box revenue, or when passengers pay for tickets. We didn't want to make any assumptions about what that revenue would be. So our goal is to conduct a pilot test, and several council members submitted questions, and those are the questions that we anticipate being able to answer as we go through this pilot. And then our plan would be to bring the results of the pilot back to the council in the fall, and to look forward and for council to determine what future you would like to take for the city relative to passenger ferry service based on the results of this pilot test. So we will hold your questions in abeyance until we can answer them based on quantitative and actual events and activities. I think that's pretty much all that we have. We will bring back any expenditures that is associated with operating agreements to the council before they're executed. That would be normal. We believe that there is high value potentially in environmental stewardship here, that if we were to go forward beyond this year, we would want to look at electrification of ferries. We would want to be considerate of the environmental impacts to orcas and other marine mammals. And we have a great resource here with SR3 who can help guide us in that process. So Peter is here if you have specific questions, but what we essentially want is your blessing to proceed to establish passenger ferry service for the city of Des Moines. And that is all that I have, unless there are questions.
Thank you. Recognize Councilmember Pennington first.
Hey, I move to authorize the city manager to begin the negotiation necessary contracts and agreements for a 2022 passenger ferry pilot program in the estimated amount of $975,000, and to bring them to the city council for consideration and approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Now I'll open the floor to questions. I see Councilmember Oxiger and then Deputy Mayor Buxton to start. Councilmember Oxiger, you have the floor.
There we go. Okay, I understand that there have been questions submitted. I haven't seen what those questions are. What are the metrics? What is this test going to, what questions are we expecting to be answered?
There's a lot of questions, but I think what we would look first is ridership. I think we would look at what is the sweet spot relative to the revenue per ticket. I think we'll be interested in seeing what impacts it might have on infrastructure relative to things like parking. I think we would look to see what, and do surveys as we were able. Why are people riding the ferry? Is it a novelty? Is it recreation? Is it commuting? We'd like to analyze some of those. We'd like to analyze the effectiveness of the ferry. Are there impacts for the marina? We don't believe there will be, and that we can isolate those, but is that a correct assumption? Is there proof of that? Numbers of questions like that.
Okay, I would very much like to see those spelled out. And also, I have a question about the timing. We're talking about July to October are pretty good weather months. This has been discussed in the past as being a year-round commuting operation. Why would we not push the start back to, say, September, so that we could, and on a 4-month basis, be able then to pick up inclement weather statistics with regard to this?
Well, I think, that's what we thought was, busy time of month. There's a lot of recreation activities associated with the marina and the beach park at that time, events in the city. And, that's certainly, who's to say that maybe we come back to council and you say, well, do we want to see a second pilot done December through March? That's possible. All of it's possible. I'm not going to make any declaratory statements other than that we have the opportunity to do this if we can get the logistics right. And that will tell the tale of where we are and what the value of this is, and what the community's take on it is, the council's take, and all of that. So I'm not going to jump in and say, here's the answers. I don't know the answers. That's why we want to do this.
Councilmember Roxiger, do you have any more questions on this round?
Possibly not this round. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Buxton, you are next. I recognize you, Councilmember Harris, right after Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to acknowledge the answers to the questions. I did have a few questions that were included. The answers weren't included in the presentation. And then I do appreciate these additional comments by the city manager, how they are going to, that addressed some of my other questions that I had submitted earlier. And I do, there is a pro and con, in my opinion, about doing a pilot while we're wrapping up a construction project. But I think the benefit of conducting it during the summer months when people are out, and a greater opportunity for us to recoup some of our expenses through some fare box. And so and with the opportunity, if we like it, if we want to keep going, that we'll have that option in the future if we want. So I'm excited to see what will happen here, what kind of statistics come out of this, and looking forward to seeing that boat down there in our marina.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, and I appreciate the explanation of where the 9.75 or not 9.75, 975 is coming from, and that it's not a new tax on anybody. What I would like to know is a little bit of how that's going to be spent, and is the operator going to be contributing for that? So I think the first thing is, are there capital expenses involved in setting up a ferry dock at the end? I presume it's going to be at the end of our pier. And are we currently in a position to do that, or do we need to make some modifications and some improvements to that in order to do that? And secondly, is any of that money intended to be spent on operating expenses?
Okay, Scott, why don't you comment if I screw this up? But essentially, we're able to move forward at this point without significant changes to our docks and marina. The one thing that we may do is work with Ranger Tugs and see if there may not be a better location for them that would free up some of the space at the end of that dock, but it would be right close to the ramp. And so the answer is essentially no, we would not need to do a lot of changes. The $975,000, probably the significant portion of that will be used for operating expenses. Although what we would anticipate is either now or as we look forward, and if council wanted to proceed to continue this for public-private partnerships. And I think it's very significant that our maiden voyage in September was donated by the Griffin family that owns Pier 57 and the Eye and the Crowd Pot and others. And they are interested in passenger ferry service to Des Moines. And so they've donated the boat and the crew so that we could have that pilot, that original maiden voyage. So I think that's what we're looking for. And as the marina redevelops and improvements occur, it'll become that much more attractive for the businesses here and also for the ferry operators and everybody to have people riding those boats to get from A to B. So I think the sky's the limit here, council member.
Thank you.
All right. Does Councilmember Nutting have any questions or comments? Nope. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Councilmember Harris, you're next in line. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there like a mission or a goal here, a specific purpose that the ferry is going to, I mean, because there are ferries and there are ferries. So, yeah, I mean, can you give me a sense of what the vision is for this?
I think the vision is determining the viability of transporting people across water in Puget Sound from Des Moines to other locations, primarily Seattle to start with.
I can tell you it can be done. So why didn't we do just a traditional RFP process? Where you would basically just call every vendor, every ferry company out there and say, put together a proposal and the best looking one will give you $1 million. I mean, I'm just.
That's not how we operate, sir. And we probably, Peter, I believe, has probably talked to every ferry vendor on the West Coast that's significant, and especially in Puget Sound. And if we were doing an RFP, we'd be right here asking council, does it make sense for us to put forth all of the effort that's involved in creating an RFP in order to try and establish ferry service? Exactly the same process. But we don't do business by going to the vendors first and asking them for proposals. We determine what it is we want to accomplish.
Well, okay, but that's what I'm getting at is, so do you have some sort of like, a draft budget, like how this $975,000 will be spent? I mean, is it basically to rent a ferry? I'm trying to get.
So council member, I think the best way to look at this, I think you're a little premature in your question, only because what we anticipate, and we have Greg here who's been working with Peter, what we anticipate is coming back to council with a potential operating agreement that would answer all those questions. And yes, we anticipate that we will be leasing a boat for this process, but the offset based on farebox revenue, we have not included any guesses about that because we're not convinced we'll be accurate. And so why would we want to cloud the picture? We're just saying, here's a maximum cost and it will be lowered by the revenue derived from the tickets. And that's kind of the process we're going about here. It's once again, it's kind of like COVID. I mean, no one's done this in Des Moines before, right? we're working with, a lot of unknowns that we're going to try and address and then share with council what those are. And if we need your approval to spend money, we will ask you for that.
I'm really not, trying to give you a hard time. It's just I've seen people give many business presentations, but I've never heard a pitch before. I mean, normally they give you a 5-year business plan. It might be cockamamie, but they have projections. And you're asking basically for $975,000 of public money to test something, and without, even any kind of projections. And we're not even to the point where we can say, this kind of boat versus that kind of boat, and route. I mean, it's just, anyway. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I was just being rhetorical. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Is anyone who hasn't had a chance yet, would they like to go? Councilmember Pennington, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's probably a couple of pieces here that would want to be accomplished. One, is it feasible for a foot passenger ferry service to operate from Des Moines to Seattle and maybe expand that into Tacoma? Two, we've been a part of all along in the development of the marina, the redevelopment of the marina, the development of the business park with light rail. If you look at multimodal transportations and you look at transportation over the history of our region, you have the bus service, and then you went into commuter trains, and then you went into light rail, and you have light rail stations that certainly with relative to Des Moines, we did a pilot program with Metro, with a bus that could shuttle people from the station at 200th down through the city, and so there's a lot of different pieces that have been put together. This is probably, in my view, the final piece of that multimodal transportation puzzle. And certainly there'll be some other things in the future, but relative to our community and providing access and reaching out to other areas in the region. So I think I think Councilmember Harris, I think there's some answers that we don't know yet, and this is part of a way to understand that and what the benefit it brings to our community. And sometimes we have to invest some things and some money and time and to find those answers. And I'm confident that we'll get those answers, and it may come back and say this is a great idea, or it may come back and say this isn't what we thought it was going to be. But certainly it's been a desire in this community for a long time. I've certainly, like many folks, been here a long time, and there's been these different conversations. I think the last foot ferry fleet we had was the Mosquito fleet that landed at had a dock at 240th off of west of Marine View Drive, and so this hasn't been done in a while, and I think there's an opportunity here for us to be a regional partner and a regional leader in the transportation realm of the future. So as we know, it's mass transit is where it's going, and especially in this region with the Puget Sound on one side and the mountains on the other. We're not like Los Angeles. We don't have a large area of ground to build freeways. So anyway, again, I obviously made the motion. I'm going to support this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the outcome is and the recommendation here in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. I also am in support of this. I think a couple of things that weren't mentioned here is I believe that this could be great for tourism from Seattle, and would love to see in the $975,000 some of the efforts we'll do in that proposal to get some of the tourism activity to come to our city, especially on the weekends, where they'll come and enjoy our farmers market, as well as eat and dine in our downtown. I know this is well received. I've had multiple people comment on this and something that we've always looked at, and Councilmember Pennington's right. It's restarted the mosquito fleet, and I think that's an exciting thing. I think it's a neat and unique way to get through the water. As somebody who travels by boat to go diving and other things, I've always found it a fascinating way to go. I think if we do this and the proposal comes back and we approve it, great opportunity for our residents to find a different way to commute in and to try this. Try it on weekends for baseball games and et cetera. And I think this can be a very successful thing if we all embrace it. I think it's worth the investment. Sometimes you make the investment. What a lot of people need to understand is what we're doing in the marina is we're spending quite a bit of money, and this is going to be one of our focal points in the community. This links us up in a multi-modal transportation effort and gives us a uniqueness that no other city in the South Sound is going to have. And maybe one day Tacoma can join the party, and they'll probably will. And I think our investment in this is they're going to have their eyes on it as well. So there's additional benefit and possibly more ferry runs and so forth. I love the attitude that we want to get electrified if we can and be green. So I think where the things we don't know and the concrete answers that some demand, a lot of times when you're doing R&D, you don't have those. What you do is you get the answers out of it. And I think this is a sensible request. So that being that, is there a second round? Councilmember Steinmetz, you have the floor for your second time.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make clear my understanding of this is we're not even authorizing the city manager to go spend $975,000. We're saying that sort of, we want him to go look at how he can put together the contracts and then bring those contracts back to us within that framework. So we're going to get a second look at exactly how all of this is going to play out, as I understand it. And if I'm wrong, please correct me.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. That's exactly the process.
Okay. And so all we're doing is authorizing you to go out and try to put the pieces together. And I certainly hope you can. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves and envision, Tacoma jumping on our ferry system here, which sounds great. Don't get me wrong, but this is just seeing if we can put it together at this point and find the landing spot in Seattle and make sure that those pieces are connected and reasonably connected up well. And I think that's something that is well worth the city's time to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Moving on to Councilmember Oxiger for his second time.
Yes, thank you. $975,000 is a lot of money. And again, if we're going to do the test, and this is, we're talking about a multimodal system we're looking at here, which is going to require that it be available during inclement weather. I am not in favor of coming back to pick up, test information during inclement weather months. I think that, if this is going to go through, that the adjustment needs to be made so that, okay, if we're going to do a 4-month period, if you go and start in September and go to December, you've got basically 2 good months or 2 months of good weather and then 2 months of inclement weather. But I'm not in favor of having to come back to get that information the second time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Moving on to Councilmember Harris for your second time, sir.
I guess, yeah. I really don't have a question, but it's public money, and I object to the notion that this is just coming out of sales tax, selling it as being, well, it's not going to cost the public any more money. No. That's money that could go somewhere else. So even before you approve going down this road where the freight train gathers even more momentum, you know, that's $975,000 that could go to something else. And man, without more information, that's really asking a lot. Because the thing is about this is the marina is, it's like whatever people want it to be. It's the romantic ferry ride with the seals and the whales, okay? Or it's the on commuting into town. And those are very different boats, very different build outs. I mean, there should be a business plan here by this point after spending over 2 years with a ferry consultant. I mean, we've already put in a ton of money into this, and to not have any more detail is just, it's just disappointing. I've just never been in a situation with this little data being asked to leverage this much money. And so that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton for your second time.
I just wanted to offer a little bit of clarity, and I can really appreciate the frustration of my colleague, but we're not moving forward with spending that money yet. Just to echo my other colleague, Councilmember Steinmetz, we're asking, I think we will have a little bit more information, not everything that we're asking, but we're going to have another opportunity to ask questions when this gets presented to us. I am very interested in having our staff and partners move forward and putting something in front of us. So I would never vote no tonight. I want to see more. And I'm excited about the prospect. And so that just for clarity, we're not voting on spending that money tonight. So thank you.
Councilmember, also, if I may, appreciate your point, appreciate Councilmember Steinmetz. You know, when we bring back what the elements of an operating agreement are, in the hope that we can create an operating agreement that provides for a boat and provides for a landing spot in Seattle, everything would be broken out as to any expenditures will be very specifically identified as to what they are. And that will be what council can vote on. This is just letting us know, you know, I mean, this takes a lot of time and energy and effort. We have some incredible resources. We've had support from, you know, Ryan Mello down in Tacoma was very interested in what we're doing. Bruce Agnew has been very interested in what we're doing. The port received money for help for electrification and may be able to help us at some point. And there's a lot of interest in this. PSRC as well. Josh Brown came down here, is very interested in what we're up to. And but you would see very specifically how any money would be spent. We just want to know whether it's worth the time and energy for the staff to pursue this. And we got to the point, we did a demand study. We've had a lot of very positive interactions with people. A lot of the developers are excited. This was generated by our marina redevelopment, and we got a lot of interest in this and said, wow, it's possible we could do this. And then it's also possible if we move forward at a future point after this pilot test, that we could electrify everything and have it green and be, you know, responsible stewards of Puget Sound and provide multimodal transportation, which is a way of also addressing, you know, less than carbon footprint and climate change. So there's a lot of positives here, but we didn't want to proceed, you know, get out over our skis. If council said, no, that's not a priority, do something else, that would be great. We'll do that. But in this case, we just want to know that the effort we're putting forward is consistent with council's goals for what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Before I close up remarks and take a vote, is there anybody that hasn't had a second pass that would like an opportunity? Councilmember Pennington, you have the floor for your second time.
I'll jump on with my other council members that, you know, the 975, like they said, that's the bookends. You know, the contract could be anywhere from, you know, maybe 300,000 all the way up to 975. It's really the bookends that we're authorizing, and so that the city manager knows where he can, what he can negotiate with. And so that's it. And then when they come back with the business plan and the contracts, then we know what we're going to buy, at least for this trial period. So that's the way I view it, and just to kind of reiterate what they're saying. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Yes, I'm getting ahead of my skis a little bit, but I agree. I know what it is. It's just to take a look and give us the concrete numbers. But I'm not going to pretend in my article, I think a year ago or something like that, reiterate it. It really did describe a vision of what it could be. But let's go. It doesn't hurt to go find out. So let's go find out. With that, I'm going to take a vote. So with all those in favor of the motion to approve him to find out about the ferry service and come back to us at a later date, raise your right hand and say aye. Okay, I see Deputy Mayor Buxton. I see Councilmember Steinmetz. I see Councilmember Nutting. I see Councilmember Pennington. Myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Oxiger, Councilmember Harris. The motion passes 5-2. All right, thank you. Now, moving on to the draft resolution, Federal Way Link Extension, KDM station name. I turn the floor over to our Chief Operations Officer, Dan Brewer. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Very short presentation here, and then we're going to turn it over for discussion. Want to bring forward a resolution recommending a station name to the Sound Transit Board. This is a resolution that we've kind of had in the wings for, I don't know, at least 12 months. We've been waiting to bring this forward. We had conducted quite a bit of community outreach and survey work over a year ago. A lot of work was done at the college. We had some open house work and things like that. And then Sound Transit started to reevaluate their station naming policies. So that process got put on hold for a while. They've completed that policy work last fall. And their new policy calls for an emphasis in station naming on geography. So like cities, neighborhoods, landmarks, or a combination of those, and reducing the length and character counts of station names. Another one was avoiding redundancy and or commuter confusion with other locations and facilities. So in particular, they were having some difficulty with commuters who were heading to the University of Washington and then getting off in downtown Seattle at the University Street Station. So there was some confusion that they were trying to correct with the station naming. And so they came up with these policy and categories that they were using to evaluate station names. So let's see. So based on those new categories and policies, the Sound Transit put together a transit user group to evaluate station names against those criteria. And those are summarized in the packet for you in attachment 2, and there's a small scale version of that on the screen here. You can see the 4 names that were evaluated for the station that's in Kent. Just off, we've been referring to it as the Kent Des Moines station for about a decade now, but they evaluated four names: Midway Station, Highline Station, Highline College Station, and Kent Des Moines Station against their criteria, and you can kind of see the matrix that is shown there. The group that was evaluating this felt that there was some potential redundancy with a Kent Des Moines station, with the Kent Des Moines Park and Ride station. And we've expressed our objection to that. We feel like this general area is well known to commuters as the Kent Des Moines area. The situation that occurred between the University Street station and the University of Washington doesn't exist between the the light rail station and the metro park and ride, which are less than a half a mile apart, well within walking distance. So commuters know what the Kent Des Moines name means. So we've expressed that objection to their results. Sound Transit is taking input at this time. They're looking for public input through the 17th, so through next Monday, I think next Monday or through the weekend. So the public can comment on this. City of Kent will be considering a very similar resolution, also recommending Kent Des Moines station name at an upcoming council meeting. And so we would recommend, next bullet point, Bonnie. Yeah, we'd recommend that council adopt draft resolution 2216, calling on the Sound Transit Board to name the Federal Link Extension station the Kent Des Moines station. But we went a little bit further. We also want to request that Sound Transit continues to support the city and the college in making connections between the campus and the station area. We've had a great working relationship with the college, and the project is working to provide those connections. So there's some language in our resolution supporting that as well. And to that end, we modified the motion that's in your packet to just further support that continued effort by the Sound Transit folks to provide those linkages and pedestrian wayfinding around the station area, and potentially even on the train vehicles themselves. So one point that I would make is, at the end of the day, the Sound Transit Board is the one who will make the decision about the station name. And they'll take all the input from various cities, I'm sure the college and students and the rest of the public as they make that decision. So that concludes my presentation. We can have some discussion or questions, but we'd recommend that modified motion.
Thank you. Could we put the motion back up on the screen, please? I recognize Councilmember Nutting.
I move to adopt draft ordinance resolution 22-016, recommending that the Sound Transit Board name the Federal Way Link Extension Station at 30th Avenue South and South 236th Street in Kent as the Kent Des Moines Station, and support Highline College's goals to enhance its connection to the station area and visibility along FWLE, and direct the resolution be sent by letter to Sound Transit Board for consideration at their May 2022 board meeting.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Oh, Councilmember Pennington has seconded it. Discussion, questions? Councilmember Harris, you have the floor first.
Thank you, Dan. Is there any like co-branding opportunity or marketing funds with cities for providing some kind of emphasis with the Highline College connection, like on sides of buses and marketing materials and that sort of thing? Do they have a formal process that we could take advantage of?
I think that's something that we could, I'll certainly look into that. That's something we could follow up on. I know that that's, I think, the kind of thing that we're intending, whether it's or not that it's on buses, but certainly on the train vehicles, looking for exactly what you're talking about. And certainly at the station, directing passengers to and from, the College Way Boulevard that's going to be constructed between the station and the campus. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, like when Seattle, they had the university station, they made sure to have all kinds of billboards that, had a picture of the nearby buildings and so on. So I can see it being Kent Des Moines Station, but also having, a visual tie-in with Highline College with, pictures of the campus and so on. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other council members that wish to, oh, I see Councilmember Oxiger. You have the floor, sir.
Have we had any kind of a determination of what the South 272nd station is going to be called?
Yes, it's interesting how at this station here by the Ken Des Moines Road, they were evaluating 4 different station names, but because the station at 272nd is literally at the Star Lake Park and Ride, the only name being considered at that location is Star Lake Station.
Okay, I do find a bit of well, it's interesting the confusion between University Street Station and University of Washington. I'm wondering if the same confusion or potential for confusion is also going to exist between Kent Station, which is a Sound Transit site, and Kent Des Moines Station.
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess there's a potential for that. You'd have to forgot that you got on the link light rail versus the heavy rail car, but I suppose that could be, you know, there could be some redundancy there.
Councilmember Oxiger, do you have more questions? Comments?
Not comment. I suppose I'm going to hear about this because of my association, but I do think it would probably be more appropriate to call it the Highline College Station. But and again, having to use the word college because there is confusion between the Highline School District and the Highline College. But I think the greater potential for confusion is between Kent Station and Kent Des Moines Station. So that's my comment.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wishes to make comments? Well, then I'll join in. I think the name recognition for Kent and Des Moines is very important to our community. I think there'll be, as somebody who rides or rode the light rail quite a bit, I think it's pretty easy. I do agree the University Place and the University Station were a little bit confusing, or the University of Washington and the University Station. But in this particular case, it's about recognition. It's important to this community to get that recognition. So I support it. Do I have any other people that like to make a comment before I take a vote? Or, well, I'll allow Councilmember Harris or Councilmember Oxiger to give a second pass if they like. Not seeing any other. Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Oh, just hoping they pronounce it right when they say it. No S.
I'm sure they'll get Des Moines Station correctly pronunciated.
Thank you. Is there any other comments before we take a vote? With that being said, all those in favor of the draft resolution, raise your right hand and say aye. Councilmember Steinmetz, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Pennington, Deputy Mayor Buxton, and myself. All those opposed? Councilmember Oxiger. Resolution passes 6-1. Thank you. All right, moving on to introduction of items for future consideration. This is the time for sole purpose of proposing new items that have not previously been before council for discussion on a future agenda. This is not a time for questions about old business. Council members can submit questions or seek updates on previously discussed business to the city manager at any time. Do any council members have new business they would like to propose? Seeing none, we will move on to board and committee reports, and the floor is yours, Mr. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've been sort of taking a tour of Puget Sound, of the different marinas, and you know, seeing how they have basically leveraged economic development. And last week I spoke with Mayor Erickson in Poulsbo, and we talked about it last week. They've and other cities have figured out how to do a sales tax by geographic zone report, which I think would be extremely useful for us. I have been told that it's not possible, but it's apparently very possible. And I think it would be something we could look at. It'd be nice to be able to say, okay, here's the business park, here's Marine View Drive, here's Pack Highway. This is how much revenue each area generates. We released the coho salmon, which is messy work, and I know people care about it a great deal. And let's see here. I wanted to thank Mr. Steinke for his comment. We used to have a code enforcement officer, and it was kind of the reason I got involved in being that guy showing up at public comment. We had a code enforcement department that was at City Hall, and that kind of went away for a couple of years and then was brought back with the police department. And as I want to thank you, because as you were speaking, it occurred to me there's two different viewpoints about that code enforcement. There's the policing side of it, and then there's also the building code side of it. And thank you for that reminder. We have had our share of buildings that you move in. I had that experience. You move in and you find out that something wasn't done correctly. So that's really good. And regarding the the project we looked at today, that really is the future of density. And I don't even like calling it housing. These are people's homes, and we're finding a way to have 6 times the number of homes for people, really nice homes in the same footprint. And that's a big deal. I post this stuff on Facebook because, frankly, when you follow the traditional procedure, you're doing all the right things. The city is doing all the right things, but it's still not reaching the public. You're going to get many, many more hits just by having somebody who just goes out onto the community page and says, hey, what do you think about this? But the challenge is that nobody except maybe the 12 people here are going to read down to page 48 to let people who live in the surrounding 6-8 blocks know what's going on. I don't know how to square that circle, but that's part of the communication we talked about last week. Thank you.
Mayor, who's next?
It's Councilmember Pennington, but he's he looks like he's having an issue. Oh, there he goes. He's unmuted now.
I didn't hear you call me, so anyway, thank you. So attended the environmental committee tonight where we elected Councilmember Nutting as the chair. I'll let him give the update. Also attended the Des Moines Marina Association meeting last night and got some good feedback and appreciated that was their first in-person meeting in, I think, the last couple of years. So anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
All right, thank you. I attended the first meeting of the Public Safety Committee, and Deputy Mayor Buxton was elected chair, so I'll let her give that report. But that's also led to some other good discussions on some issues that came up before. And that's really all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Councilmember Oxiger.
There we go. I did attend the PIC meeting, Public Issues Committee meeting for Sound Cities Association, and I'm the alternate, so I will leave for Deputy Mayor Buxton, who is our representative there. I will defer to her for the comments or for the report there. As far as comments, I want to emphasize that in this came up, you know, with our 2 weeks ago on the question of the enforcement of abandoned vehicles. And I think it applies again to what we were discussing tonight with regard to the ferry pilot project. We are not a wealthy community. You know, finances can be quite tight at times. And I'm a firm believer in the saying of measure twice, cut once. I don't believe in having to come back and revisit things. So I just want to state that's where I'm coming from with, you know, the way I'm voting on some of these things. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Moving on to Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. I too attended the Des Moines Marine Associating meeting last night in person, and again, a lot of good feedback. And it was nice to be back in person. And then today, this afternoon, was the Environment Committee, and I was elected chair. And we went over our 2022 work plan, kind of at a high level. There was a few questions asked, and look forward to actually getting back to work after 5 months of being, stagnated with the committee. So, and that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Buxton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I wanted to open with a compliment. Good work on the grant, securing these grants, that risk reduction grant and the stormwater grant, $65,000. I appreciate also the focus on the one-time expenditures versus the ongoing. So good job. Yes, as my colleague mentioned, we had a Public Safety Emergency Management Committee meeting, and I was elected chair. Thank you for your confidence. And Councilmember Pennington was elected vice chair. In our discussion, we reviewed our work plan for 2022, focusing on upcoming ordinances, staffing, summer activities, camera programs, and focused on, and our discussions over the rest of the year will be focused on safety strategies around different places in the city. And I do know we have gotten a lot of communication about the animal control officer, and that's in discussion right now. It's still something that needs to be worked out. So we're going to be getting an update on that in May. Then I attended this fabulous event at Midway Park. So it was hosted by our Parks Director, Nicole. The mayor attended, and there were a few King County Council members and their team. This is part of a King County Conservation Futures open space program that we partnered with it to secure some more space and expand that park. And so it's just a fabulous location up there. There's a community garden, a mural that was done by Kelleen Saveda, artwork by the neighboring community school students. Then, and this whole, the programs, incredible support for our BIPOC communities up there. And there's a continued investment with our programming partners, the Seattle Storm and the Ray Foundation. I mean, I think if you have a kid in a program up there and you don't have a ball, they'll give you a ball, a basketball, or there's a mini soccer court up there. Fabulous location, fabulous programs, fabulous partners. It was a great event. Appreciated attending. And then I attended another event that was hosted, I think a collaborative partnership between our chief and the Kent Police Chief Padilla. It brought together some merchants up on the highway from the Midway area merchants. Also, the mayor attended that, and VP at Highland College, Josh Gersman. So this is just part of an ongoing outreach to work together with our businesses to create strategies for Pack Highway and safety. And so up and down that whole corridor, and we're working with Kent. I appreciated seeing Kent's chief there and all these businesses. So I'm looking forward to more meetings like that and seeing what we can work out for more safety up there. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Yesterday, I had contact with Mayor Erickson of Poulsbo as well. Apparently she got the impression Councilmember Harris was representing the city in this conversation. She was very apologetic, and well, she wants to be a partner in the community. She understands that it's working with our city manager and myself and the staff is the proper place. Councilmember Harris, I just want to remind you, we must have you live within the roles and responsibilities of the council member. You cannot act without designation to other cities and represent us without our knowledge, our conversation, or anything else. So please stop this action. This isn't the only time, and it's been a history and a pattern over the last 2 years and 3 months.
Yeah, Mayor, that did not happen.
Sir, I have the floor. You are out of order.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next order of business is last week's meeting in the study session. I just want to say that I think we were a little bit hard on our staff. Our staff is doing an excellent job, and we all recognize it on a continuous basis. But the passion of how we feel and we want to see the city go forward is something that's important, and we all have that great passion. But I want to apologize to the staff if we offended you or gave the implication that we don't think you're doing a great job. We just want to support you so you can do better. And I want you to know that. And from my heart, and as a mayor of this council, I apologize if any of you were offended. On a lighter note and a better note, we, several council members, myself, and a few residents of the city attended Benaroya Hall for the mayor's benefit for Ukrainian refugees. It was a very moving experience. It had Ukrainian dance, children that did a dance, and a choir from Eastern Europe that performed eloquently and beautifully, and it was very moving, along with, of course, the Seattle Symphony, which was very touching. It was a great moment, and I urge people to seek ways to help our Ukrainian refugees, especially in this delicate and difficult time for them and their relatives. Also, the transportation meeting was held today. I was voted the chair. Deputy Mayor Buxton was the vice chair. We worked over the work plan, and we're excited with the work we can do there. And with that, the next meeting will be April 28th at 5 p.m. as a regular council meeting. And do I have a motion to adjourn? I see Councilmember Pennington. I assume a second by Councilmember Nutty. And with that, all those in favor of the adjourn, please raise your right hand. Passes 7-0. See you on April 28th. Thank you.